Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Vlogsgiving episode 5. So I'm super stoked about this episode because this topic is probably the thing that I get asked about the most from my friends, from my family, from my clients, from random people on social media. They all want to know what's the best way to meal prep. Meal prepping is key to your success. It leaves a bunch of options already ready in your fridge for when you are hungry. You have that to turn to and not to this stuff. Yeah, so I have shown a whole lot of recipes for different meals that I have prepped before. The problem with prepping a meal is that you've got to eat it all before it goes bad. Especially if you're only cooking for one, then you're eating the same thing over and over and it can get particularly boring sometimes. I really like to change my flavors up all the time. And so in my opinion, this is the best way to meal prep and my favorite way to do it. I cook a large amount of a protein source and a bunch of smaller amounts of different vegetables and carb sources so that I can pick and choose, put them together with some different spices and sauces, and then I have a unique, complete, healthy meal. So what I'm going to show you today is number 1, how to make my super easy shredded crock-pot chicken. So really awesome. It takes just a little bit of setup and then you basically turn it on and leave it be. And then I'm also going to show you how all at once I prep a bunch of different vegetables and carb sources so that you can keep it all in your fridge for up to 4 or 5 days and make some different combinations out of those ingredients, like I said, with some different spices or sauces, and you've got a healthy meal. So before we get into it, make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you're liking my content, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you're not following me on Instagram, you really should be. Okay, so we're gonna start prepping our protein. Like I said, this is going to make shredded chicken, and it's cooked completely in the slow cooker crock pot. So I started with about 3 pounds almost, I think it was 2.75 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken breast. Now, the key to getting your chicken the right consistency so that it's moist, it's not too dry, you can easily shred it apart once it's cooked, is the ratio of liquid you add in the slow cooker. So basically for every pound of chicken, you'll want to use half a cup of liquid. I used chicken stock for some more flavor, but you can just use water, it's just your preference. If you're gonna cook it on low, you're gonna cook it for 4 to 5 hours. If you cook it on high, it would be a much shorter time. You can do it within 2 or 3. I set mine for 4.5, my timer, but I took it out right at 4 hours. So the really great thing about this prep is that once your chicken is cooking, really the hardest part left to do is chopping up the vegetables. So I started with some red onion. I peeled the onion and then I cut my onions from the center outward in some big wedge chunks. I did this working all the way around the onion, and I just leave it like that in some large chunkier pieces, kind of like you would see it in fajitas or something like that. So continue that with your onion. You're gonna line a baking sheet or basically a baking sheet with aluminum foil, and this is what we're going to cook all of our vegetables on. So I actually filled up 2 large baking sheets like this, and go ahead and spray it with some oil or non-stick spray. I used coconut non-stick spray because that's what I have, but any type would actually be fine. Then I moved on to the yellow bell peppers. So I had 2 yellow bell peppers. I started by cutting off both the tops and the bottoms of each pepper, and then you have to pull out the seeds. I honestly think the easiest way to do so is just to stick your hand around that center seeded core and yank it out. It comes out pretty easily, and then you can chop up the outer edge of the peppers and throw it on the pan with your onions. Next, I moved on to the tomatoes. These were tomatoes still on the vine. I went ahead and cut off the tops, and then I cut them into wedges in the same fashion that I did the red onion. I think I used 3 out of my 4 tomatoes just because I was running out of room on my pan, but I cut them all in a similar fashion and just threw them on the baking sheet. Alright, on the second baking sheet, I started with some large sweet potatoes. Now, sweet potatoes is one of the carb sources that I like to use. You really could do any other kind of potato-like substance would also work. If you like red potatoes, if you want to cut up a butternut squash, if you want to use zucchini, that's going to be a lot lower calorie. But really, I'm just trying to give you some ideas and an easy way to prep it. I started by peeling my sweet potatoes, and then I chopped it into some about 1-inch thick chunks, and I took each circle and quartered it or cut it into 4 pieces to kind of make them uniform. I also did some Brussels sprouts. So Brussels sprouts and asparagus are probably my favorite green vegetables. These Brussels sprouts I had already washed, and I quartered them as well. So I cut them into kind of 4 chunks, each Brussels, and then I threw those on the baking pan. The last thing that I added were garbanzo beans, otherwise known as chickpeas. These are the things that that hummus is made out of. They are a great carb source. They come in a can, at least at my store. I opened the can and drained the liquid out and went ahead and ran some water over them, and then I just went ahead and filled up the rest of the space on my second baking sheet with those chickpeas. Once you have everything cut up, the last thing to do is really to throw some seasonings on there. So I used some sea salt and some regular black pepper, a little bit of cumin, as well as some paprika. You can also go ahead and go over with your non-stick spray again, or you can add some olive oil for some healthy fats. To cook them, heat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Place both of the baking sheets in the oven, and they only need to stay in there for 25 to 30 minutes. It really is amazing how easy you can have all of this stuff prepared and ready for you. Once your chicken is done, which mine took exactly 4 hours, and I could tell because number 1, it smelled amazing, and when I tried to just test it and pierce it with a fork, it was already falling apart. Just scoop out your large chicken breast, use a fork or a couple of forks to shred it into pieces, and you can put it in a container to use for your meals later, or eat some right now. Guys, that's going to conclude this video. I hope that you found that helpful and easy. I filmed a full day of eating for you yesterday that shows how I took some of these ingredients and combined them together for some delicious meals. And so you'll see that in the next episode. Oh